We're back at it. Here we are again. Hello, everyone. These are fun. These interviews and panels have been so informative. I actually had to warn the authors in the panel to take notes quietly with pen and paper because we had someone taking notes on a keyboard, which was very clackety clack. So you should probably take notes on your keyboard, though, because we won't be able to hear that while you're doing it. Without any further delay, let me introduce this episode. Do you ever feel like your words have to be perfect before they see the light of day? You're not alone. Many first time authors get stuck in this cycle, endlessly tweaking sentences. But the truth is, your first draft isn't meant to be flawless, it's meant to be a foundation. Writing a book is a process, one that will challenge and refine not only your ideas, but your voice too. Embracing imperfection is key because it allows you to move forward, to learn, and to create something that can be polished into a masterpiece later. I can introduce you to several BizBook Publishing Hub partners who can help you get through the writing process. You can check out this free resource at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Now, let's dive into today's panel where our authors will share their ups and downs of their author journeys. Excuse me. With me today is Emily Crookston, who wrote Unwritten, the Thought Leader's Guide to Not Overthinking Your Business Book. Wow, I wrote that intro not even knowing what show you're going to be on. This is amazing. This book simplifies the process of writing, positioning, and promoting a business book, helping entrepreneurs turn big ideas into impactful publications without overthinking. Love that. Gloria Treister wrote Wellness 101, Simple Steps to Good Health, a practical guide that empowers readers to simplify wellness, take control of their health, and create a personalized plan for a vibrant, healthier life. And this, by the way, is a gorgeous, like almost like a coffee table book. So beautifully done. And Marva Baller wrote Be Unexpected, Resetting Routines to Revolutionize the Future of Work, which reimagines outdated business norms with creative strategies and relatable soft skills to foster meaningful connections and energize modern workplaces. What a skill. We need that right now. All right, let's go over to Emily, kick things off. Emily, will you just share a little bit about the audience you had in mind for this book that you were writing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Robbie. So excited to be here. Yeah, you mentioned in the bio that the book is for entrepreneurs, and that's right. It's business owners, anybody who's looking to write, and most of my clients are self-published, to write and publish a book in for the purpose of growing their business or building their audience. That's the main point. And I'm a ghostwriter, so I work with clients who do that as well. So this book is basically compiling all of that experience for
It's
folks.
amazing. And you and I are in the middle of a conversation about the BizBook Publishing Hub. I'd love to get you to be a hub partner. It sounds like you'd be a
Yes.
perfect fit. All right, now we're going to go over to Gloria. Gloria, will you share with us a little bit about who your audience was that you had in mind for your book?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Robbie, also. And this book started out as handouts for a corporate wellness program. Many years ago, we had won an RFP with a global company, and we were supposed to teach the employees how to get and stay well in certain aspects of their health. And I said, well, we need handouts. And I wanted them to be positive. I wanted them to be simple, easy to follow, and easy to implement. And so we went to the task of putting these handouts together. And a couple years after that, I was looking at them going, you know what, this would make the foundation for a really good book. And so the people that I'm writing for are people who care about their health, probably professionals 40 and over who are just now starting to say, what do I really need to do to stay well? I don't want to get sick. I see myself starting to break down in not certain ways. What can I do to avoid that? And avoid having the information overload that we all experience today on the internet.
Yeah, it's hard to find credible resources like this. This is great. And Marva, what about you? Who's your audience?
My audience originally was sales and marketing professionals that really needed to meet new clients in a unique way. But now it's been almost 4 years since my book has been published. And you even said at the beginning, soft skills are much needed. And so this whole revitalization of going back to the office and getting back together for events and in-person meetings, what do you do and how do you make quick connections? So it's really for anyone in business that needs a refresh.
Yeah, it's interesting because before the pandemic, I was teaching people for over a decade how to network at conferences. And that was my focus. And then no one needed to know that for a while because we were at home. And then suddenly, oh, wow, I've so out of practice. How do I do that? Everyone was like, wait, how do I have a conversation with somebody else? So I love
And
that
it
you've
can
got this
be even
resource.
in your office. So now people are going to these big offices, so it doesn't have to just be these large events. So,
Mhm.
some of those skills actually have been lost, or they were never taught to
Right.
this new generation of workforce.
Is this book number 1 for you?
It is book number 1, yes.
Okay. And what year did you have this come out?
2022.
Amazing. Okay. So when the book came out, as you were starting to work on it, what were the goals that you were having for the book? I mean, was it just getting it published? Was there a business related goal? Was it reviews? Tell me how what were you thinking back then, and what have you learned since about what metrics to track?
Mine was a life goal, really. So I wrote my book during COVID, and I attended a webinar. At the time, it was a big deal to attend a Zoom call. I know that's your business and you produce some excellent conferences, but at the time, signing up for a Zoom call was like a really big deal. So I signed up for a Zoom call about writing a book, and they said, if you have 4 speeches, you can write a book. And I had 6 speeches because that's what I did in my corporate job. I spoke to a lot of big audiences. And so for me, it was really capturing, my boss called it Marva magic. So it was more of a hey, I can do this kind of project. And this was actually during COVID, during the lockdown. So I was used to traveling 4 or 5 days a week, and I literally was bored. So it really gave me this space and time to do something really important and leave a legacy.
So the first goal was get it out of your head, get the magic on the paper. Is there something in particular that you're now looking at as far as success of the book?
What you bring, Robbie, is this community. And for me, this, if I lived in the 1920s or even the 1800s, I would be in a guild all day long. I would have my parasol and I would come in my horse carriage, and I would meet all these very intelligent people, and we would have intellectual conversations. So for me, that's what it's really brought, is this new community of people, and it's a global community.
I love the way you're describing this. Very visual. All right, I'm going to come over here to Gloria. Gloria, this was a big undertaking. Your book is I described it as being gorgeous because it's an oversized, hardback, beautiful, full color. I mean, it's a book, like it's a lot. It's a lot of information. It's beautifully laid out. You must be very, very proud of all of that. But what were your goals when you wrote it, and how has it sort of morphed over time?
Yeah, I think number 1 goal was to keep it simple, keep it positive, and make it so that people were not overwhelmed. So with intent, there's a lot of white space. There's a lot of beautiful pictures. There's a lot of tips. There's charts that I've put together, because I think when it comes to your health, people are overwhelmed. There's a lot of conflicting information. I mean, just if you wanted to decide if you should eat eggs or not. I mean, if you Google it, it'll say, no, don't eat eggs, or, oh, only eat 2, or only eat the whites. No, it's the yolks. Don't do this, do that. And it's like, I just wanted to remove that for people. Getting and staying well is really pretty easy. We're making it a lot harder than it needs to be. And so I'd love that you called it a coffee table book. I sometimes call it a good bathroom book, because
Yeah.
each article, each topic is written in a 1 to 2, sometimes 3-page article that you can sit down and read. And when you are done, you're that much smarter and you have more clarity about that topic. You can move forward onto the next thing. So once sitting in the bathroom, you could be smarter, you can get healthier, and you can enjoy it. And I tried to also write it with a sense of humor, because I think a lot of times when doctors, and I love doctors, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes when they teach health or wellness topics, they speak above people's heads. And I think that we really need to keep it simple, very, very simple. So that's really what I did. And also, I had always had wellness clinics. So I was always marketing the skills of other people. And when I chose to close my clinic and kind of market myself, my goal really was to establish my credibility, kind of gain the authority that I was looking for and kind of change up how I was relating to the outside world as it relates to health and well-being.
Brilliant. I mean, having a book can do all those things for you and so much more, open all kinds of doors. Emily, I want to actually first talk to you as an expert because you wrote a book about how to make the most of this. And what I've noticed, I often schedule many times a week a 30-minute complimentary book launch brainstorming call. And I've made it known that I will meet with people who have not yet written a book, or people who already have a book written, or anywhere in between. 50% of the people who already have a book who come to me cannot easily answer the question, how does this book fit in with your bigger business plan? If I'm reading the book and I get excited, how do I find you? What's the next thing I can do with you? They just don't know. And so I part of the reason I keep asking these questions about original intent around goals and how it's changed over time is I want to give people who are not yet there some inkling that they need to do more than just write a really good book. So
Yeah.
Emily, what would you say was your perspective on that, and how did you apply that for your own book?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Robbie. People think, they compartmentalize these things. They're like, my business is one thing and my book is a whole different thing. And they don't often think about how the book fits in with the strategy. I always ask the question, what's the business case for your book? Because I'm getting paid quite a lot to help them write their books. So if they don't know how that book's going to make them money in the long run, it's not a good investment for them. So I'm always looking to answer that question. In the way I thought of it is, there's a couple kinds of books, business books you could write. You could write a thought leadership book, and that's really good if you're trying to become a speaker or trying to get paid to speak. And then there's, maybe a less ambitious kind of book, which is more topic focused. I'm writing a specific book about a specific system I've created, or a how-to book for my clients or people who can't afford to work with me. I want to be able to help them. And so what I would say is, think about the goals. For me, my goal was not necessarily to sell a certain number of books, although I worked with a hybrid publisher and I have 2,000 books in a warehouse that I need to move somehow. And so that's in the back of my mind. But for me, the biggest thing is getting clients. I want people to read this book and say, oh, I want to hire Emily as a ghostwriter. And if I get 2 clients, the book pays for itself. So that's my very, low-key goal. The investment pays off if I can get clients from this book. Yeah.
With truthfully, I always say that more money in the bank is the only measure of success that we really should pay attention to. Everything else, could be inflated or conflated or just sort of like be frivolous in a way. Like, well, who cares? Does it really matter that you won an award even? Like, these things that seem important, does it actually change more people buying from you, the services you have to offer? But I think the translation between the book that's written and people getting that, it's sort of like people who write a book and then someone says, oh, wait, you speak too? Like, it's because you didn't make it clear in the book that you also like you have to make it abundantly clear, or that you have coaching clients. You have to say like, oh, here's a story from a coaching client. Like, same thing from the stage. You have to say like, oh, here's an example of one time when I was working with such and such company. Planting seeds throughout. I think I love that you asked them the strategic question. It makes sense as a ghostwriter. I feel like every entrepreneur listening, if you go to hire someone to help you with your book, whatever stage you're at, and they don't ask you that question about the business case, and they don't help you think through the strategy of that, if they just say, oh, 20 blog posts, I can turn that into a book and print it for you. They're a printer. They're not a publisher.
That's
so
right.
let's get really clear on that. So I love this. I'm gonna bring it back over to Marva, because Marva, you did this really well. This next piece I want to talk about is reviews. And both you and Emily have just over 20 reviews that are written. And I know that in some ways that sounds like a very small number, but the truth is, to get more than 20 reviews does take effort, and it separates you out from other people who just hit publish and got 4. So Marva, how did you approach that, and how has that changed? Because I think you've been getting reviews even recently, even though the book's been out for a couple of years. That's pretty cool to see.
So the way that I would have done it is I would have hired Emily or you, and I would have had people that read my book, and I have some excellent, very credible book authors that actually gave me endorsements, I would have had those also be reviews. So I didn't really understand any of the business of books. So that would be my first thing of what I would have done. So now after I wrote a book and I actually worked at Amazon and wasn't allowed to even promote my book when it came out based on my job I had there, I then, joined this guild and learned about what you should be asking and requesting. So when people are like, oh my gosh, I love your book, you actually could say, it is the currency of Amazon and writers. I would really appreciate, instead of the literally 500 comments I have on LinkedIn, if you could take the time and write a quick review. So it was really understanding how to ask and what to ask for. And I do give you a lot of credit for helping me get there.
What's amazing is, Marva, when you and I met, I remember hearing that story about you working at Amazon. And I thought, oh yeah, that is kind of insurmountable, but you don't work there anymore.
Nope.
And since I first started talking to you about this, and you've been on the show before, I think even in that small time frame, you've already gotten another like 6 reviews because you're asking for them. Also through the Kindle cross promotion campaign, part of that I say, hey, if you're going to lower your book to 99 cents for a couple of weeks, why not push out that request? Hey, if you've been meaning to do this, like before we go to the next campaign, it would be really nice if you could write it. So I think that's been working for the authors that paid attention to that suggestion, which I hid in a quote special message just for you video that, I could tell who watched it because they would all hit back, wow, what a good idea. Emily, you can't make it too easy on people. You gotta make sure people actually paying attention. So Gloria, your book doesn't have quite as many reviews, but it does have reviews. That's 13 written reviews. And I can tell that started to pick up kind of more recently. I can see that there are lots of reviews coming in December. And it's nice to see that a book that's been out for a little while has started to kind of have that happen again, that you didn't just hit publish and let it lay. What's your approach for reviews been, and what's worked well for you?
Yeah, when the book was first being launched, I spent a month reaching out to the pundits in my industry. And so if you look on Amazon, I have editorial reviews from the top people in my field. And I work very hard to get those. Once you get 1 or 2 of those, you can start reaching out to other people and saying, hey, I got Dan Buettner Jr. from the Blue Zones to write a review. Will you write a review? And so I was able to get Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who I hold in the highest esteem. He is the father of functional medicine. And Susie Ellis, for instance, who's the founder of the Global Wellness Institute, which is amazing. So I worked really hard on those. And then the year kind of took some twists and turns, as we all know, that can happen in the publishing industry. I mean, my publisher wasn't getting things set up properly on Amazon. And so it wasn't until the fall when I got on to the Kindle book promotion with you, Robbie, that I even started thinking about getting other reviews. So you're right. Those are just now starting to come in. And I'm using all of that to create online courses from the book. So there is a business program going along with the book and with everything I'm doing. Do I wish I had known about that sooner? Yes, I do, of course.
Well, and thank you for coming on here and sharing that part, because I think a lot of people listening don't know what they don't know. They can't ask it. And I think having that story be shared helps others kind of think about the roadmap ahead. Truthfully, we can't see around the corner. So we need other people who've been on the journey ahead of us to share. And there's so many generous souls. I suggest anyone who's thinking about writing a book is just connect with your local or online author community as a start. I'm not even telling you to hire anyone. Just start by being around other people who are writing the kind of book you're trying to write. So if you're an entrepreneur, hang out with entrepreneurs and speakers, coaches, consultants who are writing books. Emily, I see you nodding along. So I'm kind of curious what your take is around reviews. Did you have a particular process in place to get those 20 plus reviews? And how hard is it, like in your mind, to actually get people to do it?
Yeah, it was surprisingly hard. And yeah, it was the same for me. I joined the Kindle cross promotion with you, Robbie, and that's when I saw the video and you said, do the reviews. And I was like, oh yes, because I've been kind of telling people, my launch team and others, like, buy the book, it's 99 cents, leave a review. But I hadn't said very clearly, like, the number one thing you could do for me is write a review. So that's what I started saying. And I said, my goal is 15 reviews by Black Friday, because that's when the promotion was starting. And then I did like a little count up thing on my email list, like, oh, okay, I've got 10, like, like, come on, are you going to be number 15? That kind of thing. So I kind of cheered them along, and that definitely helped. But yeah, I've talked to other authors and like, it's so hard to get people to write reviews. It takes 2 minutes. And I also had people say to me, oh, I haven't read the book yet, or I haven't finished it. And I've said to them, yeah, but you could write 2 sentences. Like, you don't have to read it cover to cover to write a review. It would really help. So
I think that we all have flashbacks to 4th grade when we had to do a book report. And we feel like we're going to get called out for not having read the last chapter. Well, then what happened to Abe Lincoln?
I know that last chapter is going to change my review.
I mean, he was shot. Well, I don't know. Sorry to spoiler for all those who weren't paying attention.
And then also what Gloria brought up. So she did say her publisher and her publicist. So I had a publisher who's excellent, by the way, and I had a professional publicist, and they were focused more on what Gloria's saying, the editorial reviews. And I did know other book authors, but we weren't having the intentional conversation that you have coalesced, Robbie, would be what I would say. So it's just a different and new conversation.
Yeah. And those editorial reviews are the reviews for those listening that go inside first few pages of a book, maybe on the back cover of the print book. They also can be shown as editorial reviews on the book sales page on Amazon and elsewhere. And these are usually, as Laura was describing, these are people who have some esteem and notoriety. They're senior leadership. They're people, New York Times bestsellers, anyone that has some sort of authority in your space. And the thing is, if no one knows that person's name, they'll still glance the title. And you don't really need more than 10, because you wouldn't put it in the book unless it was a positive review. So people may not even bother reading the review, but they might skim to see if they recognize, oh, Dan Pink, that's cool. Or they'll skim to see CEO, VP, New York Times bestseller, or some other thing that shows them like these are people of some level of importance in your industry who say this is a worthwhile book. But getting those people to then share a picture of themselves with their editorial review on social media, you might even make them a graphic to share. I mean, there's more we can do with editorial reviews. I've gotten some great ideas from other authors by being on this show and listening, but the reviews themselves are hard. Here's why I want to suggest people do this. And I can't remember where this quote comes from, but you'll all believe me that it feels true. More than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase. Everyone's going to say, oh, yeah, I do that. Of course I do that. Now, way less than 10% actually write reviews on a regular basis. And I've mentioned this before, but I've checked. Charmin toilet paper has reviews on Target and on Amazon. I don't know who those people are, but there are people who write reviews for everything. Very few people. So even though it's just a little over 20 people that you have gotten reviews from, they are going to have an outsized influence on everyone else who's deciding whether or not to buy that book, particularly if you're in a crowded market space. That becomes more and more important. So editorial reviews, very important. Go aim to get 8 to 10 of those. But then these are really important too. Minimum of 20, aim for 50. I ended up doing this work as my full focus of my business because I was jokingly lamenting that my last book at 6 months out was stuck for 6 months at 247 reviews. That was me at a dinner party going, oh gosh, I want it to be 251 so I could just say over 250. Ha ha ha. And my mentor and friend Dory Clark said, why are you not a book launch strategist? And that kind of started because she'd asked me that several times for over 7 years. I've been doing launches kind of on the side, as people who knew me asked me. But it is hard. And yet I have all these books and all this proof that it's possible to do. So I love that we're having this honest dialogue. Kind of what Marva's saying is we've got to have a bit of a conversation about it. What I'd love to know now, though, and Gloria, I'm going to come to you for this question. Aside from getting reviews, what was the biggest challenge? Was it getting the ideas out of your head? Was it believing that you should write a book? Was it technically getting the book pulled together? I mean, where did you need additional support?
I was pretty clear on the book itself. I knew what it looked like. I knew what it felt like. I knew that I wanted it to be friendly and easy and all of those things. So that part of it wasn't that hard. Although I have to say, I did finish it like 3 times. And then I was like, oh, but wait a minute, I got to write about this, or but wait a minute, I got to write about that, which I did do a couple times. That slowed me down. But I think the hardest thing for me was finding the right publisher and dealing with people. There are so many different iterations of who's out there to help you. And I hired a team that almost lost my whole book. I had it in Adobe InDesign intentionally. I was told early in the process that that's a good platform to write it on, that it would translate. But because of what you were saying earlier, all the pictures and the graphics and all the things in there made it a little different than the typical book that's text rich. My book is not. I mean, there's plenty of text, but it's very important that each page is a separate page. It doesn't flow to the next page. And so it was hard to find a publisher that could grasp what I was trying to do. I hired a publisher. They wound up having to give me my money back. It was a nightmare. And then I found another one, but they were not very responsive. That's who I'm still with. But I think I could have done better in that area had I maybe done some more research. I thought I had done my research, but you know, the more I hear, the more I learn. I'm thinking for my next book, it will be different. And I'm writing one, as a matter of fact. So
Yay!
Yay.
Time authors.
Woohoo.
That is a big deal. I feel like your book almost reminds me more of a children's book in the sense that it's very yours is even bigger, but like a lot of images, hardback, different printing process. You're not going to print on demand. It's a whole thing. It's a product. It's really creating a physical product. Whereas for me, my books are things that I design in a computer software, and then someone out there prints on demand. like it's, I don't have to think about it quite as many steps that you would have to have. So kudos for following through and actually getting it done. And yes, I hope you find an even better partner in this for next time. Marva, how would you answer this question about what the biggest challenge was other than the whole review process?
I had an excellent book publisher, but what was humbling and also kind of unknown was 2 things. One was editing. So I actually had 5 editors on my book. I did not use Grammarly. The only thing I used was spell check, and there was no AI that I used. If I did it now, I probably would use something at least for some context and some of the grammar parts. So I really had a lot of context editing, but as well as the spell check and copy editing. So it was just a lot. And it was challenging because they would give me these assignments and say, hey, you put this paragraph here and you mention it in this chapter. And I was all excited. I would, work on it like basically a school assignment and get it back to them. So that was a little bit surprising, but I wouldn't say it was challenging. It was a lot of work that I don't think I planned. And then the weird one was my book layout. So I have a business book, but I had this big idea to have my own quotes, kind of like a Brené Brown format, but they're all my own quotes. And then I have other people's quotes. And then I wanted to be black with white writing. And that ended up being a challenge with the printer and then something else. So they had to change it. And so just all of that, the font size, the white space, and like what Gloria's saying. So even thinking through all that, and that took 3 months. And I really was pleased with what came out, and we had multiple iterations. And then fast forward 3 years later, my old boss from my first company, and he literally cashed out, was a multimillionaire when he was 40. We reconnected, and he wanted to write a book, and he's in LA, by the way. And he asked the publisher, he's like, I love her format. Can I use it? And they said they've never had anyone ask that before. Like, I mean, basically that's my IP, my signature. I was like, oh, and his name's Mike Donahue, by the way. I was like, for Mike, sure. I took it as flattering. It said fine, but I probably spent a lot of money to have it, but it's like, whatever. So that would be what I learned.
It sounds like you had a real vision for this. For my first book, I hired people off Upwork to do the layout and the editing. And I then did a lot of my own editing and even more editing and my wife. And then I remember like looking at the book on the screen, like the print book version. She gave me some files to look at. And I'm looking at it and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Like, what's wrong? There's something wrong here. And my wife walks by and says, why is it in Arial? I was like, oh, that's the problem. It's a print book. And so I had to do a lot of research and a lot of education. And I remember being at a conference, there were some exhibitors with books. I was helping her figure out the gutter size. The gutter is the opening of the book, like the inside margin of a page. I was going around, I found an app on my phone that would do a ruler, and I was measuring based on the size book that I was making. Because I was also doing like not a non-standard, but it was a 5x8 versus a 6x9. So I was like, no, you cannot keep the same margins that you had for a 6x9. That's going to look awful. So I think, partly I joked, you have to write book 2 and 3 once you've gone through book 1 and you've learned so much, even when you get the right help. There is a lot to learn there. Emily, anything you'd like to add to all of this? You're just laughing along.
Yeah. I mean, book formatting, I tell you, if you're not hiring anybody to help you publish your book, hire a formatter. That is the one thing I would say. But yeah, I think my biggest challenge was I purchased a separate marketing package with my publisher. I think I would not do that a second time around. I'd probably hire somebody who's an expert in book marketing to help me with that piece of it, because I get a plan and I think, oh, that plan looks good. And then we're, a month away from book launch day. And I'm like, wait, is the plan done? Where are we in the plan? Like, and wasn't I going to get a plan? Like, wasn't I going to get a list of things to do? So I would be more clear about what I'm getting with that marketing package. It turned out that it's more PR than marketing, which is good. I can't do PR myself. I'm not a PR expert, but I was also hoping for send these emails to these people on this date, a little more.
I think what's hard is that publishers who want to do well by their authors do direct them to some kind of marketing, often more PR focused plan after, but they don't really have a good solid plan, most of them, for the launch, the getting reviews and the launch team and all the scripted things you do. And so you're spending money on the PR, or podcast guest placement is another one, but you don't have the reviews or the sales yet. And so you're like, hey, everyone, check this thing out. Oh, sorry, it's not quite ready. So I just think, like, if you were the type of person who before company unexpectedly came over would like run over to make your bed, like make your bed before you invite company over, like get that done in the right order.
I do have a funny story, if you bear with me for a second to share on that. I decided that my book had to have an index. And so I hired someone to index the book for me through Upwork. And I got the index and I started looking at it and I'm like, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. So I started looking at it, and really the message I have for people is sometimes you have to index your own book. I noticed, for instance, that the word LEAD could be lead, it could be lead, it could be a toxic chemical lead, or it could be a leader leading somebody. This guy indexed the word LEAD throughout the entire book, where I would only have wanted it indexed for when I'm talking about toxic chemicals and the word lead. So, and that's just one example of how messed up it got. And so towards the end, when I thought everything was done, I had to sit there and by hand index my entire book, which I did.
I want to one up you, but I can't. Well, my closest is the, does anyone know what rivers are through text? It's when you don't turn on the hyphen and you have fully justified text. And there are these white spots between words that form little rivers. That was the first example that my formatter gave me. And I'm like, okay, first of all, it's Ariel, but also what's going on here? And so when she then turned on, because she was designing in Word, when she then turned it on, oh, see, now Emily's like, that makes sense. Not that you can't do
Yeah.
it, by the way. There are some beautiful
Yeah.
templates people have done. But I had to then go through and I rewrote sections to get rid of the most egregious hyphens so that it would fix. So it made me re-edit one more time. You know what? What we're all saying is plan for the unexpected, create buffers, do not make overt promises. This is why I'm not a fan of pre-order on Amazon, because if you miss your pre-order date, you're really they're not gonna be happy with you. I'd much rather get the deadline done for when the book is ready and not put it off forever, but like work till it's shippable and then focus on a launch plan as opposed to this is the day, this is the only day, this is everything that's happened. It's like, oh, it's so much. I'm curious about what you all have in your books to get traffic back to your site. And Emily, I just want to, maybe I'll just ask you this question and we'll see what other stuff we want to talk about. But how should authors think about attracting a reader from the book into their whatever, their email list, their circle, etc.? So what are some thoughts that you've seen done and that you've seen work well?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. So one easy thing is to have free resources on your website, and it's best if you can create those before the book is published so that you can put the URL into the book so people can go there and actually find the resources. So that's one thing. I've seen authors put a couple different pages within the book at various places that say, go to the website, leave a review for this book, that kind of thing, so that you can check in. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for me right now.
I mean, I've also for like my second book, a lot of I also create like a zip folder, I should say, of materials, so I can always add to it. So what's delivered to the person downloading the bonus content may start with 3 pieces of content initially and go to 8 as I'm like doing that final touches. But sometimes just taking a piece of content from the book and turning it into a PDF that can be printed, it becomes a workbook or a worksheet without it necessarily being new content. It's just the formatting, especially if people are getting an audiobook or an ebook, they're really keen, or if they don't want to write in their own books, but they want to have something they can print out, or if they want to share it, with a team to have a conversation. So sometimes it's not about creating always new stuff. It's just about rejiggering something you already have. And I've seen people using more QR codes than before. I think sometimes maybe a little overdone. I saw one that was like every other page, feel like it was, QR codes are glaring. But yeah, it's cool to find ways to bring people in. I'm gonna now throw this other question out, and if you've got an answer, just like let me know. I want to know about what doors have opened for you because you have a book. So kind of because I'm an author, this thing happened. So does anyone have a good story to tell? Marva, is that you leaning in?
Yeah. So here's my business card, and it has my QR code on it. So that's the easiest thing I would say. Just put your QR code on the business card. For me, so when I wrote my book, I was in business. So I'm not a solopreneur. I guess technically now I am, but it's not my thing. I like being part of a corporation, either as a board member or as an operator. And when you have a book, some companies really lean into it. Some companies even hire Emily's of the world and have her, write books for all the thought leaders or executives. But in my company, we didn't have that for me. They only had it for technical people. And what I found is clients would just invite you into their leadership meetings, their ERG groups, their alumni conferences. And so you got to connect with the community and still be an author, but then you were actually helping the corporation you worked for and really showing that brand and community support. So for me, that's what happened. And then that led me into being on the news and speaking at conferences and just doing a lot of, all the fun parts of the career that you're like, I wish I could. And so my one book turned me into all these wishes being granted, basically.
I love this. I love the different doors that have opened. Anyone else have a story like that they want to share?
Yeah, I for my marketing piece, very much like Marva, but I made a bookmark. One side of it had a picture of my book with a QR code to buy the book, and the other side was more like a business card. So now I'm kind of putting myself out there more as an author, speaker, consultant. And it took me about a year. I've been publishing articles on LinkedIn once a week for over a year now, since November of 2023. And I've only recently started to really get the payoff from all of that work, because it is a lot of work. But people are inviting me on podcasts. They're asking me questions that will lead to more consulting work, which I love. And yeah, so the author thing really did, I think I did it in the right order. It just took a lot of more time. And I'm still not done with that book, because I'd like to, and we'll have to explore this in our groups, but I'd really like to republish it, maybe add some new content and get it out there again with a fresh look.
And
So
Gloria is a member of the Content and Connection Club, a community that I don't remember to mention on here. But we meet every single Friday for a mastermind, and twice a week we have co-working. We have a business book club, tons of content that I've created that I share with the group. And you can go to contentandconnectionclub.com to hang out with me and Gloria and other amazing, striving and thriving six-figure entrepreneurs. So definitely check that out, and Gloria would be happy to help you think that all through. In a moment, I'm going to be asking each of you to come up with a piece of advice that you would share. I'm going to go to Emily first for this. I want you to share advice, Emily, and you've got an entire book's worth. So give us your top one. For someone who's writing a book to help them grow a business. So Emily, what would you kick us off with?
Well, the first piece of advice I always give people is, if you want to get a book finished, it's about getting your butt in the seat. And so it's about I like to set a weekly word count goal, because then if I miss a day, I don't feel badly, but I have my goal for the week and I hit that word count goal. And then, after a certain number of weeks, the book is written, the draft is done. So that's my top piece of advice. But when it comes to writing a business book, what I would say is, think about positioning and publishing. Think about all that stuff as you're writing the book, not as an afterthought, not once the book is finished. Okay, now how am I going to market this? But like we've been saying, keep it as part of your business strategy, and think about how it fits in there.
Yeah, I've been describing it more as a triathlon, or maybe even an Ironman triathlon. It's not just one phase. It's not just a marathon. It's first you went for a swim. That was hard. Okay, before you were even dry, go get on that bike. Okay, now you're hot and sweaty. Now you got to go run a marathon. Like each phase, and you can't get to the bike and then be like, I wonder where I'm going. You have to have already done a lot of pre-planning. So don't get into the pool or the water, the lake or whatever it might be before you figured out the rest of it. Like, at least get a little sense of it. Marva, what would you like to add as your advice for those who are writing a book to help them grow a business?
Write a book. I mean, there's all these big life goals. If it's not your business, especially if you're in corporate, and it's a lot of people are like, I've always wanted to do X. There's many ways to do it. And I'm so glad that you have Emily on here, because when I wrote my book, I had a very, very dear friend, and we wrote our books together, and he was literally stuck in England on an assignment during COVID. And he's like, I can't sit there and do this word count, all this stuff Emily just said. He's like, no, but I can talk on a tape recorder, or I could talk on a Zoom call, and it's going to be my content, but I'm not going to, like what you're doing, this typing for 3 hours a day or 5 hours. Like, that's not me. So I would just say, find what works for you, and do it. And you're always going to have excuses for any big life. I mean, this is a skill, right? To be able to, like you said, this habit, this is this is like a health habit. And so for me, it actually is now turned into a health habit, where I do enjoy having a prompt and writing an article, and whether it publishes or not, like, I don't even care sometimes.
Yeah, it's great. It is great to have that muscle around just doing it and building the muscle around it, and becoming a little easier. I don't identify as a writer, but I'm no longer afraid of writing, and I'm working on my 4th book, right? So I feel like it's no longer like angsty about it. It's just like, it's a process. You figure it out, you move forward. Gloria, what would you like to add as we wrap up this section?
I would say that if I had to do it all over again, I might have started with a smaller project. This was huge. And I've since met people who have been very successful writing what they call small helpful books that are meant to help people with a particular problem. They're 100 pages or less. I think I would like to do that now in the wrong order. I should have done that first. But I think that there's a business case to be made for those. And there are a lot of people who use those little books as their calling card. So if the reason for writing is to have a calling card and say, look, here's what I know, I think that's perfectly acceptable. And I would say that writing, 365 pages was a little crazy for me. It's what I wanted to share with people. And so I happily did it. But looking back, it might have made more sense to start smaller and build off of that and learn the industry first, because it's like learning a foreign language. It's a whole different ball game, and I don't want to scare anyone because it's well worth the effort, but you do need to learn a lot, and it's different.
Your book still could be turned into a series of short books and, simply made paperbacks and ebooks. And then those who want it's sort of like, do you want to buy the entire encyclopedia, or do you just need this one volume?
Yeah.
But that also might be a way. Maybe you won't do all the pages. Maybe you'll pick the top hits of 3, and then that would entice people to want the rest of it. So it could be an interesting marketing thing to do, worth exploring. Something simple that wouldn't be too taxing, but would help get, I was told if you want to sell more of book 1, write books 2 and 3. I mean, there's just something to it. And my 3 books don't on paper seem like they hang together. One's about networking at conferences. One's about building an audience before you try to sell something. And the other one is using Zoom. They're all things I specialize in. All 3 of them sell, and people are often buying 2 at a time. So it's just having the content out there makes people aware of your earlier content. So I wish you all the best of luck, and I want to know how people can find you and follow your work. So Emily, where are the best ways for people to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Emily Crookston there. And my website is thepocketphd.com. That's my company.
It's one of the cutest names for a website. I love it. Gloria, what about you? Where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn primarily. That's my favorite place. It's Gloria Treister, Treister. And my website and company name is wellnessevolution.com. There's a lot of material there.
Yes, there is. And Marva, what about you?
They can find me on LinkedIn as well. And I really appreciate when people actually send a message on LinkedIn. And I've met some great people all around the world. It's been a lot of fun. And then my website is marvabaylor.com. So it's easy to find me.
We're going to put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is where you'll also find the Hub partners, who are the experts guiding entrepreneurs through the journey of writing, editing, and publishing and marketing their business book. We also, I host events throughout the year for writers and authors to get together, free networking events, tons of show notes, my talk that I do on this topic, how I support authors. You can also go to booklaunchbrainstorm.com to learn more about that. Check it all out. Go to bizbookpublishinghub.com. And Emily, Marva, Gloria, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks for having us.